Hello fifth graders, and welcome to our video on Reading Literature Standard 5.2, which is all about determining themes in literature. What is theme? Well, the theme refers to the central message of the text. It's the life lesson that the author wants you to learn or get out of the story that they told. When you're determining theme, when you're done reading a story or a poem, think about the story details and sum up what you learned in just a single word or phrase. And then what you do is kind of stretch that word into a sentence that conveys a life lesson. This statement now is a theme. For example, in the story, The Three Little Pigs, a phrase to sum up the lesson learned from the story could be hard work. Stretching that phrase into a statement could be, hard work now will pay off later. Now that statement is a theme. Themes are relatable. The theme should apply not only in the story, but also in real life. And it can't be too specific. For example, build a strong brick house in case a wolf comes doesn't work as a theme because that doesn't relate in our world. When you're identifying the theme, sometimes the author will state the theme directly or explicitly in the text. Let's take a look at the example below. I looked at all the candy I could buy. I had the dollar right here in my hand, but suddenly I didn't feel hungry. In fact, I was starting to feel sick inside. I wished I hadn't stolen the dollar. I wished that I hadn't taken the money from my brother's bank. I don't want to buy anything today, I muttered quickly to the clerk. Then I ran from the store. I rushed home and returned the dollar to my brother's bank. I had learned something important. It's better to be honest than to have money that doesn't belong to you. So think about that. Did the author explicitly or directly state the theme in the text? They sure did. And in fact, it's right in the very last sentence. It's better to be honest than to have money that doesn't belong to you. That is the lesson that the author wanted you to learn from this. Now, most often, though, the author does not state the theme explicitly in the text. Using details from the text and also your background knowledge, you'll need to make inferences to identify the theme. Making inferences is something we've already talked about and where you have to use details from the text. As you're reading, these are some questions that you can ask yourself when you're thinking about the theme. What conflict does the character have? What happens as a result? How does the character feel about what happens in the story? How do they change? What lesson or lessons does the character learn? So as you're reading, these questions will really help you think about the theme and figure out the theme of the story that you're reading. A story can actually have many themes. And why is that? Well, different people find different lessons in stories. You may find a lesson or theme that others don't see. Remember, a theme must be supported with details from the text. I want to talk for a minute about theme versus topic. These two things can be confusing. Sometimes theme, which is the central message or the lesson that you're supposed to take away from the story, is confused with topic, which is the main idea of the story. So think about the topic and then think about theme for the classic story Cinderella. If you're describing the topic, you might say, this story is about a poor girl who marries a prince. So saying about, what it's about, is really more focusing on the topic or the main idea. But if you're describing the theme, you might say, this story taught me that good things happen to good people. So again, what did you learn? What did the story teach you? That is more the theme. Think back to the story Charlotte's Web that you read in 3rd grade. And let's think about topic versus theme for that story. Topic, again, is main idea. Theme is the lesson or the central message that the author wants you to get. So when you're thinking topic, you're thinking this story is about. When you're thinking theme, you're thinking this story taught me that. So the topic or the main idea about Charlotte's Web would be this story is about a clever spider who helps save a pig. The theme would be this story taught me that true friendship knows no boundaries. Or the theme could be this story taught me that good friends are loyal and helpful. Remember, a story can have more than one theme, and both of those themes work perfectly with this story. Let's take a look at this sample now and see if we can work our way through it and ask ourselves some of those questions to determine the theme. We knew that it was time to set the butterfly free. We had seen it make its chrysalis and emerge. Then it had flown around in the cage trying to stretch its wings. Although we felt a little sad, we opened the lid to the cage one evening. The butterfly seemed confused and didn't want to leave at first. Then, in one burst of zigzag fluttering, it erupted from the cage and flew all the way to the end of the yard and down the hill by the school. "That was the right thing to do," Aiden said. "I know," I answered. Even though I was worried about the butterfly surviving, I knew it would be happier outside in nature where it belongs. Okay, so let's ask ourselves some questions to try to determine the theme of this story. What details from the text can help us with figuring out the theme? The first question we can ask ourselves is, what conflict does the character have? And we can see here, it's time to set the butterfly free. Another question is, what happens as a result? Well, we opened the lid to the cage. It erupted from the cage and flew all the way to the end of the yard and down the hill by the school. The next two questions, how does the character feel about what happened, and how did they change? At first, they felt a little sad. They didn't really want to let the butterfly go, although they knew and how they felt was it was the right thing to do. How do they change? They were worried about the butterfly surviving, but they said, "I knew it would be happier outside." So again, we're gathering textual evidence. We're asking ourselves these questions as we read the story to help us determine the theme. The last question we want to ask ourselves is, what lesson does the character learn? And here we can see that the lesson learned is wild creatures should be free. Now, chances are you've heard a theme like this before, and that's the neat thing about themes. They're repeated over and over in different stories. So this theme doesn't only apply to this passage, but maybe many more that you've read. Let's take a look at determining theme in poetry versus a story. Let's take a look at this poem. A day to play got washed away. Rain comes down, covers town. Eyes are sad, rain is bad. Come downstairs, get the chairs, blankets, sheets, looking neat. Inside forts instead of sports, rainy day tears can turn into cheers. So we're going to walk through the same process. We're going to look for textual evidence. We're going to ask ourselves some of those questions to see if we can determine the theme from this poem. What conflict does the character have? Well, rain. That's not what they were wanting to do that day. That's the conflict they're facing here. What happens as a result? Well, because there's rain and they couldn't go play, they're building inside forts. How does the character feel about what happened, and how do they change? Well, here's how they feel at first. Eyes are sad, rain is bad. But do they change? Yeah, at the end they're saying rainy day tears can turn into cheers. So what lesson does the character learn? Let's take a look at some choices. And I want you to think about these as you think about the poem that we just read. And do any of these, do one or more of these make sense for the theme in this poem? So let's look at them. Your choices are perseverance pays off. You can make the most of a bad situation. Love conquers all. A cheerful attitude can overcome obstacles. Or be careful what you wish for. So think about those and which ones might be a lesson that either the characters or that you learned that you got out of this poem. So I'm pretty sure you would agree we can cross off perseverance pays off. That's not really what this passage was about. The theme does not apply to this poem. What other ones could we eliminate? We're going to take off love conquers all. This is not a poem about love and love overcoming anything. We're also going to cross off be careful what you wish for. The character in this poem was definitely not wishing for rain. And that leaves us with two possibilities. And like we said, poems and stories can have more than one theme. So both of these themes can be supported with details from the text. Both of these can be the theme of this poem. The first one is you can make the most of a bad situation. We saw that happened. We see from the evidence that they decided to bring down blankets and sheets and make forts. And instead of sports, rainy day tears turn into cheers. A cheerful attitude can overcome obstacles. They really did decide to not dwell on the rain, have a cheerful attitude, try to find something fun to do, and they overcame the obstacle, which was rain. So really, like I said, either one of these themes can be supported with details from the text. These details, like we said, are the ones that support those themes, like the day started out badly because of the rain. The speaker decides to build indoor forts. The speaker realizes that rainy days can still be fun. So that's what you want to do as you're thinking of the theme. Look for the details, look for the evidence. So let's review. What is theme? In literature, theme is the central message or lesson learned. It's best stated in a sentence that includes a key word about the lesson. How can I determine theme? Well, sometimes the author, like we said, will state the theme, usually somewhere near the end, but more often you are going to need to use the details from the text to infer a theme, just like you saw we did with the butterfly passage and with the poem about rain. We had to use details and clues from the text to make an inference about the theme. So here's what I'd like you to do now. I want you to make your own circle map and think about stories that you have read and what themes you can think of. Maybe you've read stories where you can think of the theme right away. It really stands out and pops out to you. Maybe others you have to think a little bit harder, like what was the main lesson that the author wanted me to get out of this. So do a little brainstorming tonight. Be prepared with your circle map tomorrow so that we can jump right into this discussion of theme and other stories you have read. And what I would also like you to do is think about where we are right now in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We're about halfway through, so the theme might be starting to come to you. Start thinking of the details and the evidence from the text that might show us what lesson the author wants us to learn from this story. I hope you've enjoyed the video, 5th graders. I'll see you tomorrow.